For the first time ever, I am thrilled to say we have an official sponsor for the Dirt Talk podcast, and that's Ariat. I've worn Ariat boots on every job site I've visited over the years, traveling in them across 5 continents. More importantly, I have yet to find a single project where working folks, unlike me, are not wearing Ariat boots and workwear in every condition imaginable. And there's really good reason for that, and that's because it's phenomenal stuff. And the more I've learned about Ariat and the company, the more I've loved their brand. So with this, Ariat is offering any Dirt Talk listener 10% off their next Ariat order at ariat.com/dirttalk. That's 10% off boots, jeans, and workwear at ariat.com/dirttalk or at the link in this episode's description. With that, let's get to the show. Do you deal with the core for the most part?
Yeah.
They are. It is a tricky mistress dealing with the core.
Oh.
And it's so varied too, depending on what.
I was just going to say that we do a lot for the different districts, and they all do everything different.
They're all different.
And it's the same.
Yes.
And it's crazy. And that boils down to the information they give you, how they process the information. I mean, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
When it's that big of a operation, then it's never the same.
Yeah. And it's really varied too based on who.
The person you're dealing. Oh yeah. That makes
which is also you would expect it to be the same across the board no matter who you deal with. But that's not at all how it works. Not at all how it works. No. So
yeah, and luckily we've had some good luck getting it's just all, like you say, who you get on the job.
Yeah.
Somebody that's been there a while knows what's going on. It's great.
Yeah.
But somebody that's new can't ever make a decision because they're new and they don't want to do anything wrong.
Yeah.
That's kind of the biggest thing that we have seen and I don't blame them. They don't want to make some decision that everybody can look at and say, that's what we need to do. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't. We need to. Let's run this up 5 chains,
Yeah.
When it's a simple on-site common sense type thing.
Yeah. It's just everybody covering their ass.
Right.
So what was the show specifically called?
So it's called the Inland Marine Expo.
There is an expo for everything.
I know.
I've learned there is a different show, different expo for everything
like
imaginable.
Vegas is, there's tons of electronics. Like they talk about Con Expo is so big.
Yeah.
Then they all talk about the electronic show out there.
Yeah.
That is way bigger, apparently.
Way beyond.
I didn't even know you could get bigger than Con Expo.
Well, and then they have the car shows out there that are supposed to be enormous. Yeah, CES is the Consumer Electronics Show. And then there's a big car show out there that's just absolutely, maybe SEMA is what it's called.
SEMA's big.
Yeah, SEMA's big. Like there's some monster shows. And then Con Expo. So Con Expo is 175,000 people. Bauma has 500,000.
Yeah.
In Germany. So you go Con Expo, you're like, it can't get any bigger than this. And you go to Bauma, it is like Liebherr builds. They spend tens of millions of dollars on their booth. They build a whole 3-story building.
Inside.
All temporary.
Wow.
All temporary. So they build it. It takes them a month to build this entire building. And then they take it all down. Just for the 1 week. Liebherr had over 1,000 people working at their booth. Just Liebherr employees. Not all the staff, not just Liebherr employees, over 1,000. Yeah.
Does it last, is it a week-long show then?
Yeah, it's like 9 days.
Oh.
So it's 2 weekends and then a full Monday through Friday.
Wow.
I think.
That's big.
It's big.
That's real big.
And there's like every single thing imaginable at that show. It's pretty incredible how many. That's what I'm always amazed by at Con Expo. It's like when you go to the random halls, you see all
go upstairs.
You go to the random halls and it's like 17 different manufacturers of traffic cones.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I didn't know there were so many traffic cones on the market.
Or you go upstairs and it's like a bunch of bearing manufacturers.
Yeah.
And a guy that makes doorknobs and, all these things that you don't really think about, but there is a need for someone
Uh-huh.
at different companies to go around and look at all that stuff.
Yeah.
As an end user, you never really think about that.
No, I used to, I went through a cigar phase for whatever reason, in college. So I'd go to this cigar shop every once in a while, and there were these rich guys that would hang out in the cigar shop and they would just shoot the shit and smoke cigars.
Mm-hmm.
and one of them, he had a trash business, and this guy, he had some coin, like he was loaded, and his whole business was on trash. And this was before I'd really got into this world and,
Right.
understood the waste
something of it.
business, so on and
Yeah.
so forth. He was so rich, and his entire business was taking out people's trash. And that's when I started to realize there is a business for everything, and you can make a ton of money doing anything imaginable. Anything imaginable, there's a business for.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I've said a lot of times that, people talk about why do you do this or why you do that. And I say, I think you can make money doing anything there is.
Yeah.
It's all in how you do it.
Yeah.
And just like you said with the trash, which now you know a lot more about the trash than
Big business.
back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you can make money doing anything.
Yeah.
It's all in how you do it.
Yeah. I'm excited you were able to stop by though, because the last time I saw you was on your barge in the middle. What river was that? Illinois?
Illinois River. Yep.
Illinois River, just outside of Peoria,
Mm-hmm.
down the river from Caterpillar's bulldozer factory.
Yep.
Right on the river there. You had your 870 swinging around back and forth, the
Yep.
clamshell,
Clamshell.
and I was getting pretty sick. I was not feeling it that day. It was a little struggle for me, and so I remember just catching up with you, talking through how you got started from where you were to now what you do. But I because I was sick, I don't remember the storyline very well. I just remember it's quite a unique story.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's unique.
That's all I really remember, is like just thinking this is such a random. I don't know how you did this, but how did you start off? I guess
I would say that I started off when I was probably, 10, 12 years old. Like a lot of guys, just started mowing lawns in the neighborhood. I think I used my mom's push mower and mowed my first yard, and I think I got $20 for it or something. It's probably 10. Did that for a while, and I think it was probably when I was around 12, I believe, I bought my first lawnmower, a John Deere 214 from a guy. And I remember I had $1,000 in my savings account that my parents had deposited from birthdays and whatnot. And I used that money to buy that lawnmower.
nice.
And then I picked up a couple more lawns in town there, and I had a little trailer that I would tow my push mower and weed eater and leaf blower with in the back, and I'd tow it with my tractor. And I was in town there, I was kind of always the joke of the town, the kid riding the lawnmower down the bike path. I mean, all the time, and there's a real busy road right there along the river. And everybody would see me driving around, go to the gas station, and I did that for probably until I was 16, I would say. There was another mowing job I had there at one point for a local realtor guy, where I would take and he would drop his lawnmower off up at these empty lots on top of the hill, probably 2 to 3 miles from my house. And I would ride my bike up there, get on his lawnmower and mow the first, 50 feet off of the road of all these lots. And then I remember there was a few times I didn't ride my bike, and he would get his daughter to drop me off up there. She just turned 16 or whatever. Every time I still see her, she complains about having to get up early to take me to go mow for her dad. It's pretty funny. But I think I was probably 14 at that time, and there was I needed a weed eat around all the posts. They had posts marking every corner lot. He left me his truck, and he's like, just drive the truck around and, move so far and weed eat and come back. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I was 14 driving a truck around, like, it was pretty neat. Then when I turned 16, I still did the mowing stuff. I had a few more yards I could expand. Just people that I knew from my grandparents, their friends. Hey, I need somebody to mow. So I was able to expand and get a little better area with the truck I bought. And I bought a trailer that I could pull the mower on. And also at that time, I'd always been interested in equipment, but I was never really raised around equipment.
What'd your parents do?
So my dad was a pattern maker, which is real similar to like a tool and die maker.
Yeah.
Builds things with his hands. He was a 7 to 3:30 guy his whole life. He's scheduled, 7 to 3:30, and if he had to work overtime, that was a big deal.
Uh-huh.
I got to work overtime, so it's that's just how he always was. And my mom was a pharmacy technician.
Okay.
So really no construction in my family at all. So with the construction thing, there was a guy in town there that I consider him my grandpa. He wasn't really my grandpa. And he worked at a company called Murphy Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard of Murphy Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They were the largest pipeline company in the United States.
Okay.
Michaels, I would say, is probably,
yeah.
They were Michaels
Okay.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was always like a dream of mine to like work at Murphy Brothers just because I thought it was cool. So I ended up, another guy I used to go when I was 16, I went to the stock car races with. He worked at Murphy Brothers as a truck mechanic. And I said, hey, man, that'd be really cool if I could get a job there, like after school. And it ended up, he got me set up as a truck washer. So, they had a fleet of like 30 Peterbilt semis that with lowboys that moved everything everywhere. And they'd come back. And so I worked there actually, if I should back up a little bit in my schooling, part of my schooling was when I was 16, I was able to get into the career center. Our school's smaller, so we went to in East Moline there, like a vocational,
Mm-hmm.
They had auto body, they had welding, they had all these vocational type things.
Yeah.
And I got into this program called Manufacturing Technology. And it was a partnership with the school and John Deere. So what I did there was...
Because John Deere's the company.
John Deere is 5 minutes from the school.
Yeah.
And it's John Deere Harvester, actually, right there that we were partnered with, where they make the combines and headers. So when I was there, we learned a lot of machining type things. Basically the machining stuff we would learn at the school. But when so that was an afternoon type class.
Mm-hmm.
So I would leave my school at noon, and then from noon to 3, I would be at the vocational school. And our time at the vocational was split between John Deere and at the school. So we would actually go to the John Deere factory at the John Deere welding testing facility.
Mm-hmm.
And we were taught by all the John Deere welding and instructors.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really neat because, we all had hard hats. We had John Deere gear. I mean, it was a pretty neat learning experience because we did get to learn so many different things that you normally wouldn't have,
Mm-hmm.
because we were in the factory. There was times where we'd go on tours in the factory and, things of that matter. But so when I was there, we would learn the welding, machining, all that stuff. And then I would do that. And then I'd get off of school at 3:00. And that's when I would go to Murphy Brothers and work from 3 till 9:00 at night, washing trucks. They had a big fab shop, a big truck shop, and a big cat shop. And all we would do is we'd come in, sweep all the floors, clean up, take the garbage out, do all those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we would do that. And then I'd get off work and go home, go to bed and do all that. So, and that was like a Tuesday through Saturday job. So I would work and I probably worked 30 right, 30, 35 hours a week. So
that's a lot.
It was
in school.
It was. Yeah. And there was times when I had that job, I still mowed some lawns. Not quite as many, but I probably had 5 or 6 lawns, that I would take on an off day or something. So that was when I was 16 to 17. When I was 17 years old, Murphy's hit a bad patch, and all the new hire type guys all got laid off. They slowed down a lot, as construction is up and down.
Yeah.
So I got laid off, and then that was in the summer. It was right in June, I think. I got laid off, and I was 17 years old, and everybody's like, okay, now you get to sign up for unemployment. I'm 17. I can't get unemployment. No, you can't. Just try it out. So that's back when they had the phone thing. So I'd call into the phone thing. I got $234 every week for, I don't know how long, for a job that I'd had for a year.
Yeah.
I got unemployment until August when I went back to finish my senior year in high school. And one of the questions they ask you on the thing is, are you actively looking for work and this and that? And yeah, okay. The one question they asked at the end, I was nervous all summer long because of this question. Are you currently enrolled in school? Okay. Well, how do you answer that question? Because, now I'm back to high school, senior year.
Yeah.
Yes. And the checks quit coming. So I'd still mowed lawns, so it was kind of a cool thing, and that was the only time I've ever had unemployment in my whole life when I was 17 years old. So that was a pretty neat little thing. So I mowed, and then I also bought a snowplow for my truck at that time there. So I, did some driveways and a couple parking lots. Then I got to where I graduated high school, and part of our program was you are offered a job at John Deere Product Development over in Silvis, which is, right next to where my shop actually ends up now today. And that's where they do all the product development for combines, seeding equipment. And it was a lot different type of work than at the factory. The factory's a different deal. So basically, you had to perform so well in the class, I guess, to be offered a position. So there was 2 of us from our class, and in our class of this manufacturing technology, I think there was only 8 people in it, so it was pretty small. So it was very good because it was hands-on, and we were, it wasn't like a normal school class where there's 20, 25 kids in there. So we did that. I took that job, and then I still mowed lawns at night. And that job over there was from 6 to 2:30. I worked that summer, learned a lot of neat things, drove gators around and, just did different things over there. Then it came time to part of our manufacturing thing as well was you get a scholarship. Okay. So the scholarship worked. It was at the local community college, and you'd get a 2-year degree in manufacturing technology. So I signed up. Okay, cool. I'm going to go to college now. I signed up. I think I spent $2,000 on books and tuition for the first semester. And the deal was, you have to get decent grades, and then you get paid back. So, okay, here, I'm going to go to school. I went to school, started sometime in August, and it was like I think I only had one class where it was you had to be there or something like that. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, man, I could be mowing that guy's yard right now, or that guy wanted his bushes trimmed today. Like I could probably be doing all these other things other than going to school, and it was odd because, really school, I never had any problem in school. Like, I was always good at it, I guess, but it was never like a big priority to me. Yeah. in high school, like I would literally do my homework 10 minutes in the class before that's due. And, just, I never put a lot of effort into it, I guess. And I always had decent grades. So this whole time I'm sitting there in college, I'm thinking to myself, all these other things I can do. I went for 1 month and I quit. I'm not going back over there.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm out. So I finished mowing lawns the rest of that fall. And then it ended up, so it was somewhere around December, I think. My dad was a pattern maker by trade. And, they've always struggled to find younger people that want to do that trade because it's a specialty type deal and it's kind of a dying thing. And I enjoyed the machining type stuff, and pattern makers do a decent amount of that as well. So I went in and met with my dad's boss, and I said, I'd like to have a job and, try and see if I like this. And he's like, okay. So I went to work there sometime in December, and I still had some snow plowing accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go and plow, and then I'd come in late. They were real flexible with all that stuff. And we got a lot of snow that winter, so I was probably gone more than I probably should have been, I guess, And they never complained or anything about it because, he knew. And finally, after that winter, then March, I believe it was, I went into his office and talked to him, and I was like, hey, man, I do like working here. I do enjoy this. But, I said, to me, I've always got something in the back of my head that I could be doing differently. And he's like, you need to go do that. And I kind of was taken back thinking, oh, he's going to be mad at me. No, that was furthest from the truth. He was excited to see that. And from then, that spring, I started mowing more. I picked up more lawns. And actually, I bought a lawn business from a friend of mine that I'd grown up with.
Yeah, from all of this, you probably had saved up quite a bit of money.
No.
So you were spending all the money.
I spent it all.
Okay.
I had snowmobiles, four-wheelers, RC cars. Okay. We did it all.
All right. So you were, it was funding a lifestyle.
It was, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I never blew money, by any means, but I didn't hold back either, I love snowmobiling. I've done it my whole life. This is one of my favorite things to do. Oh, I had a snowmobile.
So was that was that the motivation to work so much then?
I don't know. It's funny you asked that because I've thought about that myself.
Yeah.
What made me driven the way that I was? And I don't really know that answer. I would think that probably had some influence on it, but I don't know what the reasoning is.
I do think sometimes people do give, I know they give me too much credit all the time. It was just no, I was just doing it to make some money. Right.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah. There's not a good reason for it. And I didn't have this grand vision or anything. It was just no, right. The more I worked, the more money I made, and I liked money. So that's why I worked a lot.
Yeah. That's something that I've thought about a lot myself, and I don't really know. I mean, the money, obviously, I never really wanted to be broke, I guess. And there was times that I can remember when I was 16 years old that, between mowing, because growing up and when I was younger, I always had my own money. I didn't ask my parents for $20.
Yeah.
My mom would give me lunch money to buy lunch at school, $20 a week or something, I think it was back then. And that's about it. I didn't ask for money. I was always very proud to not do that, I guess. But I can remember there was times where the guy I was talking about, my grandpa, we would go to lunch at the local tavern right there, and they had great cheeseburgers. I mean, I've been eating them for 30 years now, it seems like. And there was times where I'd say, hey, Pat, you want to go to lunch? Okay, we'll go over there. And I wouldn't have enough money to buy my lunch. Right? Yeah. So, and this is when I was 14 to 16, mid 16 even for sure. I wouldn't have enough money. So what I would do was I would take I had a collection of some silver dollars and some weird things like that. And I would bring them over to his garage and he would hold them kind of as collateral for lunch. And then when I paid him back later, I could get those back. And I mean, I can remember many of times I did that, which is crazy, somebody would tell you, why would you do that just so you can go eat a lunch when you should be able to eat at home or whatnot? Yeah. But that's what I did, and it was, I don't know, right, wrong, indifferent. That's what I did. And so that was pretty interesting, So the money thing, I don't know.
So how much did you buy the lawn mowing company for?
So I believe when I was 18, a buddy of mine, Todd, that I had been around for 10 years because he was always the lawn mowing and snow plowing guy kind of in town. I'd looked up to him forever because that's what I did. That's cool. I see him drive around mowing all these banks. And I think what ended up happening there is he had done it for 10 years. And then I bought his couple zero-turn mowers, a trailer, a truck. I want to say it was $20,000. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to our local bank right on the corner there. Kathy Fritz was the bank lady. And I said, hey, I want to buy Todd's lawn business. And she knew, it's a town of 1,000. Yeah. She goes, oh, okay. And I said, well, this lawnmower is worth this, this truck's worth this. And it ended up, the $20,000 was about what the equipment was worth. And she gave me a loan for it.
Wow.
18 years old.
So you got a loan.
No cosigner.
No shit.
Yep.
Wow.
And I want to say the payment on that thing was $453 a month or something for 5 years,
No kidding.
But yeah, she actually gave me a loan because she had been, so where her bank was on the corner, I drove my lawnmower by her bank all the time. She saw me,
yeah.
Everybody in town knew that's what I did.
Yeah.
So, she knew. I don't know how she did it or whatever. I mean, you could probably never do that now.
No. I still haven't been able to get anything from a bank.
Really?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, so how that happened, I don't know. So that was the first lawn business I bought. And then I think probably a year later, because with that lawn business that I got from Todd, I mean, I picked up 30, 40 accounts. I mean, that was like an instant start for me to actually do enough mowing where I hired my first employee. Yep.
How old were you when you hired somebody?
I believe 18.
Okay, so
yeah,
pretty damn quick.
It was a buddy of mine I went to school with.
Yeah.
And he mowed with me for a couple of years, I think, and then he ended up getting into the concrete business and stuff like that.
So at this point, full bore mowing.
Yeah, I was full bore.
Yeah.
And snow plowing as well. Yeah. I had probably 2 snowplow trucks. And I remember back then I'd go to I remember at this auction I bought for $1,000 or something, a Ford F-250, complete pile of shit. All right, this is going to be our new plow truck, guys. That was and I've always worked on all my own stuff back then, especially not as much anymore. But we would take and get that thing and it'd make it through half a snowfall. And it was painful. Those are lessons you learn in life that you can't take back. Yeah. They're valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was full bore at that time. And I probably went another year that way. And then I ended up, the guy that I worked for at Murphy Brothers, washing trucks, he also had a lawn business at the time when he worked at Murphy Brothers. I bought his lawn business. So now I bought 2 lawn businesses, and got some good accounts from both, and it was crazy too, because everybody had always told me, don't buy a business with no contracts. Uh-huh. I can tell you, I got 0 contracts from both lawn businesses that I bought. And I bet you, 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was, when I sold my lawn business, I bet you I still did half of those accounts.
Wow.
That they just stayed. So it was pretty cool. Everybody talks about lawyers and papers and all these things. And that was proof that it.
Yeah.
Really
well, and with like your lawn care provider, whatever you want to call it, if they mow the lawn and it looks nice, you're not going to go shop around.
Right.
for another guy. You just, once you find your guy, that's your guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what you roll with.
Yeah, and that's a big piece of it.
And small town America. And
and if you're doing a good job, you don't have any other reason to do anything different.
Yeah.
Bearing somebody, the guy coming in, I need to double my price. Well, wait a minute here.
Sure.
Then people would get questionable, I guess you would say. But yeah, it's a no contract type thing. And I remember the guy that I did, there was like 8 or 10 banks that I used to mow and snowplow for this guy, Jeff. He left that bank, went to another credit union. I started doing all their credit unions too because of Jeff, so it was just a neat deal that those are all experiences that I can look back on now. And it's pretty neat.
Did your parents, were they just like, oh yeah, go have at it? Were they just pretty hands off?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They didn't.
They just let you do your thing.
They didn't have anything to do with any of that stuff that I did.
Yeah.
And I think it was almost better that way. And I think a lot of that was based on my own always wanting to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
That's a thing is, and I still use it to this day. And now doing all these leadership type things that I've been doing, I'm learning is the worst thing in the world to say is you'll figure it out. Like that has been my company motto for 10 years, and it's a horrible one because does it work out? Yeah, sometimes, but it's not good for helping lead people by any means. Yeah. And that's what I'd always done, so, and I think a lot of the reason that I was so driven to that is nobody told me, so I had to figure it out. Now, if I know, I should help everyone around me because all that does is make it better for everyone else,
Sure.
So, but, and that's probably why my parents didn't do anything. And I was always, I never had like a set schedule and stuff, with them, you got to be home at 10 or, whatever. I was always a good kid. I never got in trouble. I never did anything wrong, so
yeah,
they didn't have any reason to question me, I guess.
Yeah.
But I was pretty free.
So you're doing all these lawns, and then you said you sold the business at some point?
Yeah. So I was doing all these lawns, and I finally got to a point where I hired an extra guy. So I always had only 2 people in the lawn business, I guess. And ideally, we would go and we would mow 4 days a week. And then the 5th day you would use either as the rain day or a extra day, which would involve put mulch down, trimming bushes, those type of things. So I finally, when I hired my second employee, he helped so I didn't have to go mow every day. That's when I'm kind of looking around and I want to buy a skid loader.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured out I bought a skid loader from a guy in Florida somehow on eBay or something. And the guy delivered it. It was an ASV RC60. And I think I paid the guy like $14,000 for this thing with a dump trailer.
Wow.
And a grapple.
Wow.
This guy went around and did hurricane cleanups. So he was going to get me set up doing hurricane cleanups, and he delivered the thing and all this stuff. And obviously none of that ever panned out.
Sure. Not as many hurricanes in the Midwest.
Yeah. You have to go to Florida and things. Yeah. So, but I ended up, I used the skid loader to do little grading things. There had been a couple times prior to buying that I had rented a skid loader for something, but I ended up using that skid loader to tear out concrete driveways. A good buddy of mine, he was a concrete guy at for his day job, and then he would go do side jobs at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go and during the day with the skid loader and tear the concrete driveways out. By the way, tearing concrete driveways out with a skid loader is the most inefficient thing you could ever do, especially when they have mesh or rebar.
Uh-huh.
So I did that for a while. It's like supplemental to my other lawn business. And in the meantime, I had bought a John Deere tractor with a brush hog. And this tractor was rolled over. The cab was smashed. All the windows are broken out of it, but it was like a pretty new tractor. And I think so what I did is I straightened the cab all out, bought all the glass. I fixed it all up and made it new again. So I used that doing brush mowing jobs as part of like the skid loader type work, just extra things. So I'd always had those to use. And I think what happened then, I bid on a job for the city of Rock Island, a ditch cleaning job. Just go in and clean the ditches out and reseed them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had no idea how to price ditch cleaning, aka zero. I know that I can drive my skid loader around, and I think I used $100 an hour or something back then. Well, ditch cleaning, I have no idea, other than I know I can call my buddy and get a dump truck for $75 an hour.
Yeah.
That I'm going to need to haul the dirt off, So I get online and I start reading bid tabs. I'm like, oh, well, this is what this guy said he'd do it for before. Oh, okay. Well,
because that's the public information that anybody can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every public construction contract, they post a bid tab for it. So here I am reading bid tabs. Okay, well, they were $15,000. Well, I should be able to do that for $13,000. Why not? I'm going to go do it myself. So I turned the bid in for $13,000 or, whatever it was. The jobs all varied, so it's not like you're going to copy and paste it. So I ended up and I got the job. I'm like, okay, now I need an excavator. So I ended up, I bought a little Gale 603 Mini, 6 metric ton, and cleaned all these ditches out. I rented a hydro seeder, seeded them all back, did all that, and did it all myself. So that was like my first real construction job, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
I had to get a bond on that job from my insurance guy. And he was like because my business was small enough at that time, it was still like a personal insurance broker.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually the father-in-law of the guy I bought the lawn business from, crazy. Hey, Dick, can I get a construction bond on this job? And he's like, what? Well, yeah, they say to get you from an insurance guy, Well, I guess I can look that up, and that's how I got my first bond. So I ended up doing that. We did the job and everything was good. And then I think I picked up some more snow removal accounts. I used the skid loader on that. I'd always use that tractor on that as well. And then did that and then kind of just maintained like that, I'd say, for a little bit. And then I found a job real similar to the ditch cleaning job. It was a box culvert cleaning job. I said, oh, well, I can clean a box culvert out. I'll just dig the sand out of there, Well, I turned in a bid for, I don't know, $50,000. Well, everybody else was 100, 120, So I'm thinking, what did I do wrong here?
Yeah.
And ended up, so I was like, oh, okay, well, I have to clean these culverts out, but I have to, dig out either side of the culvert as well. There's 6 foot of sand in there. Well, now I need a big excavator. And I had seen a machine at one time that had sold from Ritchie Brothers in Colorado, sold on there for $32,000. It was a 2003 John Deere 225 zero tail excavator with, I believe, 7,500 hours, right? So now, I don't know a lot about equipment at this point, but I thought, well, that's about all I can afford. So I ended up finding the guy that bought the thing somehow. and I think he might have listed it on Machinery Trader. And I think I paid him $36,000 or something. You know, he made enough, and I can't remember if I even picked it up at Ritchie Brothers for him or something. You know, it's something like that. But it ended up, I got that back. I go down, I start working on these box culverts. Okay. This is filling up with water now that I dug a big hole on either side. Now I have to go rent some pumps, pump the water out.
Uh-huh.
Well, shit. How am I going to get this sand out of here? Because I had planned on using a little Trek Dingo to go in these, you know, they were like 6x10 box culverts or something. Now I'm going to get a Dingo in there. Well, the Dingo's not going to run underwater. I got to keep the water out. You know, so all these things are in there. I'm like, wow, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So it ended up, I must have talked to somebody somehow. I washed all the sand out of there with a trash pump.
Wow.
So what I would do was I would pump the downstream side, keep it dry, go to the upstream side that was full of water, use my 2-inch pump, put my swim trunks on, climb in this box culvert, and literally trash pump wash the sand out of these culverts. There was 4 of them. I mean, it was crazy. And I look back at that now, I would never do that again. Like, never, in no way. But it worked really awesome. And it was like one of those things that, you know, I was down there working on it myself, so it didn't cost me a lot of money. But yeah, it's just crazy to look back at the things that I did that nobody would think about doing now.
I think that's in a way though, that's the magic of you'll figure it out, because some people, they're misguided and they think I know what I'm doing or know how to build stuff or whatever it is. And they ask me, how do I figure out how to estimate work? And I just like, the best advice I have is like, you'll figure it out. Like, I think like you can go talk to 100 contractors and kind of figure it out, but until you just put a dollar amount on it and just commit to it and just try to make it happen, you don't really know.
Right.
And so you can teach people, but then there's also value in putting yourself in sticky situations like that. Like, how the hell am I going to figure this out?
Oh, I'm pretty good at that, unfortunately. I mean, you know, so then we did that box culvert job, and that was a learning experience as well. And then to get, I believe it was somewhere a couple of years after that, I sold my lawn business because it got to a point where, so the reason I got into the other side of the construction is I wanted to be able to afford to pay people more money. I knew that I couldn't hire someone to work on my lawn business that they could make it. I would be able to pay them enough money that they could live and support their wife and family and all that. Like, you just can't, it doesn't work. It's too seasonal. Snow, you can't really count on snow. You know, snow is really always a bonus. You know, our average snowfall every year is at 30, 35 inches, I think.
So it's not too much. Yeah.
It's not, you know. And that's why I ventured into the construction side is, you know, there's more money there to be able to pay someone. You know, you're mowing somebody's $35 yard. You know, I mean, now it's probably $70 for the same yard, but, or should be anyway. You know, so that's what got me into the construction. That's why I sold the lawn business. A buddy of mine bought it. He did it for a few years as well, and it worked well for him. But that's what got me moved over more to the construction side, I would say.
I see. The only high dollar lawn businesses I've seen are places that like Florida, Arizona, California, where you have landscaping year round.
Right.
But then like that was one of the confusing things coming to Nashville was the lawn companies here are trash for the most part. It's kind of like, you know, Jeff with a Suburban pulling a trailer with a mower on the back, and like that's the lawn care company. But then you go to Arizona and it's like
lawn
these
pros,
big professional outfits. These like big time operations with really good looking vehicles, and everybody's in uniform and they have good looking equipment. But it's like you're working on a 365 day
Right.
So he's sitting
Makes
there.
a difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Not that that's the only reason for it, but it's like, yeah, here, your lawn only grows 6 months a year, so that's it. That's all you got. So you get into construction, you're doing bigger work, and you just, how do you start to get into the whole?
So I would say my next move then was somebody told me, hey, you should look into government contracts.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, I mean, yeah, that's great. Cool. Bunch of big money. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
And there's two jobs I can think of in particular that I said, okay. So I got on this website. What's the name of the movie? The War Dogs.
Uh-huh.
You ever seen that movie?
Uh-huh.
That was me, dude. I got on FBO website and I'm like, oh, cool. Corps of Engineers, Rock Island District. That's me. I'm right here.
Yeah.
And I punch it in and look it up. Oh, there was in Des Moines, or up by Des Moines, it was called Sailorville Lake. Huge lake, big core lake. So they have a bunch of riprap on the face of this lake. I mean, this dam is half a mile long.
Wow. And
what happens is when the water comes up, all the drift ends up on the riprap. The water goes down, the drift stays. So they put out a contract to remove all of this drift off of the dam. I go up there. Oh, man, I can do this. I got a skid steer and a Mini X. So I turn in a bid. And so part of it was I had to remove the drift. And then I had to tub grind the drift at the stockpile at the lake there. Okay. I think I got a price from the guy for $3,500 to bring his grinder in for a day, so that's cool. Some guy I found. So I take my Mini X and skid loader up there and I say, okay.
And it's just low bid.
Just low bid.
So you just, if you put the lowest price on it.
Lowest price, you're getting the job.
Yeah.
Right. I later learned that I was probably 1/10 of the price of everyone else based on how they were going to do it versus I was going to do it. I'll explain that. So I go up there with a Mini X and I'm like, all right, we got to get these logs off here. Well, this is like RR6 riprap, 600-pound riprap.
Yeah.
You're not tracking anything up and down on this riprap.
No.
All right. So I went and I took there's a road on top of there with a guardrail. So they let me close the road. The park did. So I go up there and I'm like, all right. And I had found somebody to go up and help me, I go up there and put a shiv on the backside of my bucket, a pulley.
Mm-hmm.
And I got like a 3/8 cable about, 500 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And I took this cable and I lifted the bucket up on the excavator up on the top of this levee, lifted it up, and I take this cable, I hooked it to my skid loader. So I hooked the cable up and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to drag these logs up here. And it was only everything bigger than 6 inches you had to drag up.
Uh-huh.
So here I go running up and down this 3 or 4 to 1 slope on 600-pound riprap, running up and down, hooking this log up, go back, jump up. And I would end up be the guy running up and down the riprap because the other guys that I had to do it, they weren't feeling that.
Yeah.
So I literally ran up and down the face of that dam, dragging all of these logs to the top of the dam. And then once we got them all drug up there, I took my little dump trailer that I'd bought. I threw them all in there, hauled them over to the park, and put them in a pile and let the tub grinder guy come in and grind them up. And so that job I did was like $13,000. I learned later the way everyone else was going to do this job was about a 300-ton crane hanging way out over the thing, picking each log. So if you can only really think for a second, like how much they probably were for the job.
Yeah.
I don't know the actual numbers because it was one of those that they don't have to,
Yeah. It's safe to say, though, you left a lot on the table.
Oh, that table, I didn't even, it was full. You couldn't fill it up anymore. I mean, there's no way they weren't hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But, it was the same deal. I went there, I kind of did it myself, and it worked. So that was my first experience at a government job.
Working for the Corps.
For the Corps.
Which is federal government.
Yeah.
Doesn't get much bigger.
No. And so then I ended up, I think I still had my lawn business at the time because I ended up mowing some parks locally for the Corps. I turned a bid in on the local Corps park right there. So we did that. And then another one came out. So I've always had, I live right on the river. I like the river. I like everything about the river.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine does some barge things. Actually, the guy that had that party over there, the cleanup guy, river cleanup. So he's always, I've learned a little bit about barges from him at that time. Well, the government puts a thing on their website. Hey, we need to buy 30,000 tons of riprap and load it onto our barges. So you had to get the riprap, load it onto the government barges.
Uh-huh.
I can do that. Why not? Sure. I call the rock quarry. I get the trucking guy. I do all these things. This was like $1 million job. At the time.
Yeah. 30,000 tons. That's
and,
no joke.
I'm a 23, 4-year-old kid. Like, that's no big deal. I have no money. I couldn't have bought the rock ahead of time. I couldn't have done any of that stuff. Well, that was only half of the biggest problem was, one, how do you load the rock on the barge?
Mm-hmm.
2, where do you do it at? 2 things, I was clueless. And luckily, there was a guy that at the one rock quarry there, between the rock quarry and the 2 different trucking companies that I dealt with, that I still deal with, we were able to figure out where to do all that, right? So I turned this bid in. Yeah, cool. Oh, here, you get the job. You get to start in 2 weeks. Oh, shit. Huh. Okay. All right. So the government says, hey, we want to have a conference call and talk about how we're going to do this. Whew. I still remember I was helping a buddy of mine work at his a concrete job he was on. I remember having to take that conference call. I didn't know what to tell him.
Uh-huh.
Like, I thought, so I told him, oh, I'm going to just drive the dump trucks on the barge because that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
That's how they can load barges. You can Mack trucks on there. They said, well, what are you going to use for a set of ramps? So I'm going to just make a set out of some crane mats. Those guys on the phone, I could tell they were pissed. Like, they were furious that I was even involved with this job because they knew at that point that's going to be an epic failure.
Uh-huh.
So it ended up, there's like one other guy that does marine work. I called him up. They said, you need to call these guys. Okay. Hey, can I rent your set of ramps? Yeah, we'll rent you some ramps. Okay. So I took the ramps down there, used my skid loader with the hydraulics on it to run the ramps up and down. Mm-hmm. Ended up, we drove the trucks on there, and that's how we loaded the barges.
Wow.
Yeah. It was crazy. And like half the truck drivers didn't want to drive on the barge, because
I don't blame them.
It moves. Well, it moves.
Oh, yeah.
It moves less with a truck on there than it does with the excavator for sure.
Uh-huh.
But, it's just a different feeling, and some guys loved it. Some guys hated it. When it rained, you can't back up the ramp. It just a lot of different things. But that was like my other experience of, oh shit, I got to figure this out. I mean, because that was a lot of money, and like
that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's big time. I mean, 30,000 ton. That's a lot of rock.
Yeah.
Can you explain the Corps? Because I feel like unless you work directly with the Corps, no one really knows they even exist or at all how they work or what they even do.
Right. So the Corps, and there's quite a few. So just like our local district is the Rock Island district.
Yeah.
There's different districts. If you there's a St. Paul district, there's a Rock Island district, there is a St. Louis district.
Yeah.
And when people think of the core, they really only think of the river. Now, granted, a lot of it is the river, but there are also other things. Like for Rock Island district example, there is the Saylorville Lake Reservoir. They own and manage that entire reservoir out there. It's out there by Iowa City.
Mm-hmm.
Lake Red Rock is another one. Coralville Lake. So they manage these big dams and reservoirs and manage the water levels in them, and they're a pretty big thing.
It's the federal government, and it's like I probably need to. Do you even know how they were formed? When they were formed? They're a really old organization.
The government, the
Army Corps, yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe probably as old as
18.
Yeah. But it's mostly navigable waterways.
Typically, yeah.
That's to maintain the United States navigable waterway system. Which is really important stuff. People don't understand.
It is. Like the Rock Island district guys, if I had to put a percentage on there that I thought like navigable waterways versus the reservoirs and other types of things, I would say the river is probably 70% of that deal.
Yeah.
But along with the waterways, there's the parks, all the campgrounds up and down the river that the Corps does own and manage. There's that. There's, I'm trying to think of what else, like their construction side branch. There's a lot there.
Yeah, it varies. When I was the job with Kiewit was for the Corps because it was a jetty at the mouth of the Columbia River. So it was the Northwest District of the Corps. I forget what they're actually called. I think
it is Northwest.
I think
District.
it's actually Northwest District. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we were making rebuilding an existing jetty, and I didn't deal very much directly with the Corps because I was at the quarry making the rocks. So the guys that had to deal with the Corps were out
on the job.
Yeah, placing it. But they're very particular.
Oh.
they have rules, and you don't alter. You don't.
There's no question.
The rules are the rules.
Yeah.
And if they don't like something, they just say we don't like this, and then you can't say what do you mean? It's like you do it their way, or at least that was my. Now they're great folks, and they're doing really important work, but there's definitely. It is quite particular.
Yes.
Which is the most amazing thing about these stories, that you got away with that kind of stuff. Because it's like you can get away with that with some random commercial developer in Georgia, but with the Army Corps of Engineers, like, man, that's not bad.
I agree. And typically, like, that would never happen, you know?
Yeah.
And like to the particular side, I can remember I loaded an entire barge load of rock one time that the rock quarry had sent me. Well, what has happened was the rock quarry was running low on their supply of rock. So they started mixing all this other nasty rock in with it that the Corps doesn't want. A bunch of fines in it.
Yeah.
They don't want fines when they're putting it in the river. So it's got all these fines in it. And I ended up, they said, we're not taking that load. I unloaded the entire barge with a wheel loader. Wow. Took me all day. Every bucket up and down the ramps, loading trucks. Yeah. So
it just, it doesn't meet their spec.
Nope.
Not our problem. Yeah.
One of the Corps' mottos that they say is, we want what we ask for and nothing more. Like they say it all the time.
Yeah. There's companies that are really successful working with the Corps because you figure out what they want.
Yep.
And you just give them what they want.
And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. Which is easier said than done, but
very.
Yeah. Yep. And so from that point on, so I didn't realize you've been working with the Corps for that long. Then.
Yeah.
Cause this is a ways back now.
Yeah. That was probably 2010.
Yeah.
So 14 years or so, 13. Yeah.
Things are a little more sophisticated now.
Oh, way different. Way different.
Yeah. And so you just keep bidding work then for the Corps?
So we ended up, we would do some, and as we grew doing a lot of Corps type work, a I just would add excavators here and there, long reaches, dozers, things of that matter. And then I started doing some levee repair work.
Mm-hmm.
Is what we kind of started out in the doing a lot of, putting a lot of riprap down. That's what I've always I love riprap.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of riprap. Just kind of progressed on with that. And then we actually built in Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids is spending like over a 10-year span, I think it was. I mean, a couple $100 million or some crazy amount for flood control downtown.
Wow.
I mean, there's levees and flood walls,
which is another big function in the Army Corps is just flood control.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is all, I believe, funded by the Corps, and about half of it is administered by the Corps. The rest of it's with the city. But it's all Corps oversight. It's all Corps spec. It's the Corps.
Yeah.
But we actually built a levee and a gatewell structure up in Cedar Rapids for the city to Corps spec. Then the Corps accepts it, is how that goes. It was like a half a mile long levee downtown Cedar Rapids.
And levee's tricky because again, there's a spec.
Yep.
You've got to meet the spec.
Yes.
And compaction's big on levees.
And that was what we fought the hardest with that. Uh-huh. And this goes back to, the spec, that, you and I can look at and say, yeah, it says that, but clearly this is what it's doing right now. Oh, we don't care.
Yeah. They don't care what the material's doing. They just want the spec met.
Yes. Yeah. So all this dirt we hauled in, it was called glacial till. It's the really gray.
Yeah.
I mean, it is rock hard.
Yeah.
And where we got it all from, we stripped a quarry. So we stripped all this good. I mean, you couldn't get any more impermeable soil to build a levee out of that gets rock hard. So we haul all this stuff in and we cut it, bank right out of the bank. We haul it in. Oh, it's 3 points high on your moisture. Your spec says this. Okay. So now you take all this dirt that is compacted so hard, you can barely run the disc over the stuff. Uh-huh. It's not really too wet, but it's too wet by their spec. So then you spend a day drying it, and the stuff is so cohesive that it just doesn't dry well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rock hard. And it's like, this stuff, you can't even pound the pin in when you're testing the compaction. And now you're going to tell me that it's too wet, so you want to redo it when it's at 102% compaction? Why are we even touching this? So that's part of the things you have to deal with that make everything difficult. Those are the rules. That's what they want. Yeah. So that's what we want. Nothing more.
When do you start to get into the dredging work?
So when I got into the marine work, it was shortly after we did that levee job, I bid on a Corps habitat restoration job on an island.
That's very cool.
So here we are. We're going to do a bunch of grading on this island, plant a bunch of trees, and put a bunch of my favorite thing in the world, riprap down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How are we going to get our equipment out there? Well, let's buy a barge. Cool. So we go. There was a local guy there that has been a lot of help as well. Hey, you want to sell those barges? Yeah, I'd sell them. We don't use them, So I bought these 2 little barges from him. Okay. He's like, be careful. They're old, And when I say old, this one barge is a 1932.
Wow.
1932, riveted hull. It's old, right? Thin. Okay, cool. All right. So then I need a tugboat. So they make truckable towboats that you'll see. They move around to lakes, and you can put them on a semi. So I found a towboat down in, I think it was called Pilot Town, Louisiana. So when you look on the map, it's a town that looks like it's in the ocean because it is that far down there.
I've been to Venice.
I think it's past that.
Yeah, it must be. But Venice is out there. It's like, this is a different, it seems like a different country out there.
Yeah. So I said, okay, cool. We'll get the towboat. all right, so I have our mechanic and our truck driver take the lowboy and the service truck down there. All right, you guys, you know what? You're going to have to figure it out on how to get it on the lowboy and just bring it home, And that's what they did. They get down there and they're like, holy shit, dude, this is, same as anybody that hasn't been around, river, stuff like that. Like, this is different world down here right now, and they look like they're in the ocean, so they got it on the lowboy and it's too big. We had to cut some of the roof off and weld it back on and all this stuff. And then their whole trip on the way back, luckily we found some good pilot car guys because they're going and those pilot car guys, they're savage, dude. Like they'll go up and they'll have one of them will go up on the bridge. They got to go across this bridge, cross whatever. He'll go and stop the traffic on the bridge, and they're bombing the lowboy truck in the opposite lane going across this bridge because the lane that they're in, they can't go on that side of the bridge because it's bad. So they have to bomb through the median with the lowboy and the towboat on there, go the wrong way, get across the bridge, and then come back on. Like, it's the craziest 2-day trip I think they ever had. And they still talk about it, but that was part of the, you guys will figure that out, But yeah, so we get the towboat, we bring it back, put it in the water, and load the excavator and dozer and head over there and start working on the island. And that was cool. And then I think it was like Memorial Day weekend. So that job, it flooded a lot on there. So when it floods, you can't, and it was a real low type of deal, so you couldn't work. So there was a lot of time where we didn't work there.
And you just put the equipment on a barge.
Yep.
Yeah, because it floats. Yep. Yeah.
And just get it tied up in a good spot,
Yeah.
Then it was Memorial Day, somewhere after that. And then I get a call from somebody down there. Hey, your barge looks like it's leaning. Oh, really? Huh. Well, can you have somebody run over and check on it? And then I get a picture of it. It sank with the excavator on it.
Oh, man.
So now we're like, shit, what do we do now? So now we figured out how to get the barge out. We pulled the excavator. Luckily, it was close to the bank, pulled it over and pumped all the water out of the barge. Got it out, finished that job. And then to get into the dredging, so I had a pretty small setup at that point, not a very big boat. And the boat that I had there, I still have it. It's a boat that anybody can drive. So the way the regulations go on a boat, in a towboat, is any towboat under 26 feet, anybody can run it. It's just like running your pleasure boat.
Okay.
You could go jump in that thing, and if you want to hook on to 10 full barges, you can do it. That is a horrible idea, by the way, but you can do it legally, I guess you would say. And we use that boat for a lot of stuff for a long time. Because nobody that works for us at that time had a towboat license.
Yeah, anybody can run that.
Yeah. I mean, it takes 5 solid years, I think, to get a towboat license.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I watch these guys. The river's right here.
Oh,
I watch them do what they do, and I scratch my head every time.
It's tight.
How do you do that?
It's tight.
It is really tight, and it's high stakes. I mean, some of these, like, there's like a petroleum terminal down there.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're running petroleum or cement or something a little more high stakes, it's like, wow, that's...
Oh, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was at that party last night and we were talking about that. So they have, I think it's Heinz Furlong boats were running through there. We watched 2 of them go through last night and they have sand on them.
Yep.
They have a sand plant down here somewhere, I guess.
Yep.
But they're running them 3 long and 1 wide. And a captain guy I know that's around here a lot was at the party, and I said, Scott, what are they running? Why are they 3x1? And he goes, because it's so narrow down here at this last bridge, I guess, that it's just so narrow that you can't get through there. And we watched them come through last night, and it wasn't that bad. But like you're saying, it's And that is another thing that we've learned with the river. That is different everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of river stuff that is more like you guys have here. When we're on the Mississippi, everything is wide open.
The Mississippi's crazy. You go to the Mississippi, you're like, whoa, this is like big
massive.
Time. Big time.
Yes.
They are moving some material up and down that thing.
And even when you were over on the Illinois,
that
was a pretty good spot there too. But it's a lot more congested on the Illinois River than it is on the Mississippi by far. Because we went over to the Illinois and I'm kind of around there like, watching these boats pass. Those guys running them boats, you can't fit one more barge between them and they're blowing by at 6-7 mile an hour. And you're like, wow, you're just scared. But everybody has a different level of engage of just based on where you're at.
The dredging side of things is interesting too, because once you realize that every river is constantly filling itself up with silt, like every river is trying to fill itself up nonstop and change courses and directions.
Yeah.
And we don't want the rivers to do that anymore.
Right.
and so like naturally a river will meander over time. So it'll put sand over here and then which then moves the water over here.
Right.
And then, maybe a storm comes through and the river will move over time, except for like the Grand Canyon or something when it's going through rock. Now, and I'm explaining this in layman terms. Now we just want the river to go where we want it to go because there's a city over here, there's a town over here. You can't move it.
Right.
So then that silt doesn't have anywhere to go. And so then you've got to get rid of it somehow.
Yep.
Essentially is.
Yeah. And, all of our channel maintenance dredging that we do is basically, they have it's a set path, like you say.
Yeah.
Between the Corps and the Coast Guard. They're the ones that kind of set that up. And there's certain spots that they just silled in. And it's interesting, too, on the type of material that you dig. Normally when people think of dredging, they think of mud.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I thought
That's what
before
I
came to see you guys. Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And then like when you came to see us out there on the Illinois, there's way more sand in it than...
It's all sand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really clean.
Yeah.
Really nice stuff.
And I think that has to do with just how the water is moving. It carries the sand, but like the mud keeps moving, I guess. But, and that's what the dredging does is, there's certain spots that we go to and we dredge every year over on the Mississippi. And same with the Illinois. There's just certain spots that they can't fix. Now, I don't think on the Illinois they have much as far as wing dams, but on the Mississippi, there is a ton of wing dams.
I didn't realize how many there were until I drove. We drove from Minneapolis down to Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
And all the way down the Mississippi. That's the Mississippi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Mississippi there, up there. It was the first time I'd driven that stretch of the Mississippi. There's a
ton of
infrastructure. Yeah, all the way down the river.
Yeah. And that's what they spend a lot of time and money is maintaining those. Not very often they have to put new ones in. It's more of a maintaining thing.
It looked like almost every one of them had maintenance going on.
Yeah.
It was quite incredible. Me, idiot. You just think like, just the Mississippi, they just let her rip. No, it's all engineered nowadays.
It is.
Because it's critical to keep it running as planned because it's like a highway. And if that highway stops.
Right. Everything stops.
Everything stops.
Yeah, that's a problem. The thing that's cool about the wing dams is they really do a really good job of, so in dredging, like on the river there, high water is what causes a lot of sand to move. High water is what causes a lot of need for dredging, I guess you would say. Now, if the water goes up, it moves a bunch of sand, but now the water is able to come down slowly. Those wing dams will work and they will clean the channel back out on their own.
Yeah.
That's what they're designed for.
Yeah.
Now what happens is the water goes up, moves a bunch of sand, and then goes back down fast, the wing dams aren't allowed to work enough with the higher currents.
I see.
So then the sand gets stuck there.
I see.
And that's when we have to do more dredging.
Yeah, the project I was working on the Columbia River, the way it's designed is they want it to naturally scour and naturally dredge itself, so they don't have to dredge that channel because they just channel the river in such a way that it just washes out the material. Yeah.
The way the wing dams, same thing.
How many dredges do you typically run in a season?
2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Yeah.
And
we've got multiple contracts.
Similar to what I saw, big excavators on a barge.
Yeah, we'll have 3 of those setups working.
Yeah.
And with the setup, I mean, there's a lot. You saw
there's a lot to it.
A lot of barges, a lot of boats, a lot of excavators, dozers, just to keep the sand moving.
Yeah, you've got the main barge with a spud. Is it one spud?
2 spuds.
2 spuds.
Yep.
So those are basically giant metal sticks that keep the barge in place.
Yeah, they're 24-inch square.
And they're heavy.
Though they weigh about 12,000 pounds. And they're 45 feet long, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and we have a winch on there that so those have a cable that run all the way through them and back up the other side. And we have a cable there, and you use the winch to pick those up and move yourself. And once you're in your spot where you need to dig, you just drop the spud back down, and that keeps you anchored in the sand.
It's stupid simple, but very effective.
Yes.
And then you're doing the dredging with like a 90-ton excavator.
Yep.
With a custom, what kind of boom do you run?
It's a Norris 65 foot.
Norris, that's right.
From out in Ohio. Those guys they're cool.
Yeah.
They built some cool stuff.
Do you run mostly? You had the Deere that I saw.
Yeah, so we primarily run John Deere.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is we have really good relations with our dealer. And the other reason is John Deere Parts Warehouse is 20 minutes from my shop.
I got you.
And John Deere Parts Warehouse, you can do a will call on parts within 2 hours, I think. We can have about any part that we could ever need for a John Deere machine.
That's all you need then. Yeah. So that's like the main dredging setup.
Yep.
You run Trimble Marine?
So we run Trimble Marine on all the dredges.
Which is pretty fancy. I think Trimble Marine is one of their coolest products.
It is. And it's funny, I was actually talking to them yesterday at the expo. It's way more than we need for dredging.
Yeah.
But it's nice that it works, I guess. We just don't use all the potential in that.
Sure.
Because that stuff's powerful.
Yeah.
And it's good.
What's the plus or minus on the elevation?
6 inches.
Okay. Yeah. So you just need to get it within 6 inches.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now you got to remember that you're in sand within 6 inches, sand that is in water that is moving.
Yeah.
So, there's been a lot of trial and error on how to get perfect on that, because, say we're going to dig to 12 foot below flat pool. That's their terms. So flat pool is the lowest the river can go, technically, with the locking dams. So I think we usually dig, depends, 11, 12 feet. So if they say to dig to 12, they will pay you to 12 and a half feet if you take more sand out.
Mm-hmm.
But now if you go to 13 feet, that extra 6 inches, you just dug for free.
I see.
So it's very important to get in the sweet spot there.
But it also depends on, I think you said it depends on when they're measuring it as well.
Yeah.
Because it might fill back up.
Yes. Yes, that's another.
Before they come out,
yeah.
And then they say you didn't dig it far enough. Like, no, I did dig it, but
we've had that issue. I can't even count how many times. And depending on the material, we had a lot of issues with that over on the Illinois River.
Yeah,
it's more dirtier material that is more like quicksand, not beach sand, almost.
And then the machines swing into a barge, dropping the material, big old clamshell.
Yep.
How many yards on the clamshell?
4-yard clamshell.
4 yards.
It swings over. It dumps that onto
and it can spin.
Yep. It rotates.
Yeah.
You dump that sand out over onto another material barge, we call them. Some people would call them, out on the lakes, they'll use like dump scows. So like,
yep.
They call them a scow. Put the sand over there. Then the towboat will take that over to the bank. Remember where we had that little pad set up where they were unloading. There's another excavator sitting there with a clamshell. Grabs the sand, throws it off of the barge, and then the dozer places it wherever they.
Is that how you typically do it? You just put it where you can?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot of regulation. Even with the government themselves, you would think that the government, we can just do whatever we want because we're the government. Well, they can't. But there's a lot of regulation with where that material goes. And that's a big piece of where to dredge, how, and it's a challenge.
It's pretty damn cool work. Is most of the work nowadays, is it the dredging work?
That we do currently?
Yeah.
No.
Like the volume that you do every year. So you're still doing all kinds
we
of
still
stuff.
do a lot of other levee construction stuff.
I gotcha.
We do underground utilities.
But all for the Corps.
A lot of it.
Almost all.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a different dynamic. The dredges only work really 6 months out of the year or so.
Because the rivers freeze, huh?
Rivers freeze, and then the need isn't really there.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of maintenance in the winter.
I see.
All winter. Like the dredges are going to be heading out here in the next couple of weeks, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then they won't come back till December or so.
I really want to see the Mississippi work.
Yeah.
Because the Mississippi.
It's big. Yeah.
Yeah. And they run some big dredges on the Mississippi too. Like
down south.
in the world of dredging, the Mississippi, you guys are a minnow.
Oh, we
compared to some of the big ones down south.
Dredging in general, we are a minnow.
Yeah. Compared to I the one dredge that I've been able to get around on the Mississippi was a Weeks Marine, suction dredge. Yeah, and it was they were pulling like 15 million yards from the bottom into for a environmental restoration project. So they're pulling like 15 million yards and pumping it. I think it was like 10 miles.
Yeah.
Over to where they were placing it. And it's just like, this is
crazy.
This is big time stuff.
Yeah.
This is big.
And to keep that all moving is huge.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably 10 booster pumps in that line of.
Just the energy required to move that sand from the bottom of the river 10 miles away over here. It's just, and you just listen to the rocks banging around on the steel pipe that they lay out. It is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. In dredging, what we do with an excavator is nothing compared to those big suction dredges at all.
And then, so I'm trying to get on a project right now. What we do in the States from a marine construction standpoint is in a lot of ways like kindergarten compared to like the Dutch. Mm-hmm. The Dutch, the Belgians, all of those countries that they've been doing marine construction for thousands of years. And like a majority of Amsterdam, would be underwater if they weren't building all of these. And just the equipment they have is insanely cool.
Yeah.
Insane. We went to a dredging job in Saudi Arabia, and they had one of the biggest cutter dredgers in the world out there. Boskalis is the one. Yep. So biggest marine construction company in the world. They're
huge.
Crazy. The scale and scope of this company is insane. And then I talked to another company, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing some port expansion." I'm like, "What do you have?" They're like, "Oh, we've got tons of 1,200 Hitachis," and it's just like they just have everything. And then they're all custom. So the ones I saw when I went to Dubai, they probably had 1,200 long reaches all working together. And then they had a 390 triple boom working with the 1,200 long reaches. And it's just like, there's just this kind of money doesn't exist in other parts of the world. This is just wild.
Yeah, a 1,200 long reach.
I'd never seen one in the States.
Yeah.
I'd never seen one.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, there's 10 of them working on the same beach.
On the same
awesome.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can think of about 3 of them that I know of.
Yeah. They don't exist really.
No.
But I'm so fascinated by the world of marine construction, and seeing you all this past summer was a treat, unexpected.
Yeah.
But we were just driving through,
Yeah.
and that was well worth
that was neat.
the detour. Yeah.
Yeah, on the road show.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to do that again, but it was cool to catch you guys. So
I passed one of those RVs the other day, and I thought of you. And I'm like, ooh.
I'm triggered every time I see him now. I'm like, I don't want to do it. It was fun. It was fun. Well, I have a meeting I need to get to, sadly.
Cool.
But I'm glad you're able to stop by while you're in town.
Yeah.
Appreciate you hitting me
No,
out.
that's pretty much.
From mowing lawns to dredging the Mississippi.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool.
It's definitely something. Yes.
If people want to learn about you guys, where do they go? Company's Legacy
just the
Corporation.
website, yeah, Legacy Corporation.
Yeah.
We got a Facebook and an Instagram.
How many people do you have working at the company?
In the summer, it's usually in the 40s, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat seasonal.
Yeah.
You'll ramp up about this time.
For sure. The dredging is very seasonal.
Yeah, I got you.
But yeah, there's quite a bit. There's a lot to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say there.
And water just abuses stuff.
Yeah.
In a different way.
And everything you do on the water is 3 times as hard as on land. Every single part of it. From getting it out there.
Yeah.
That was another thing. Like when you were down there, how do you get fuel to that stuff?
Sure.
Something you don't really think of,
uh-huh.
but it takes a lot of time and effort to do that, so.
Yeah. Well, and if the machine breaks, you don't just call John Deere and have him send a service truck.
No. You need a motor on that thing. One, you can't just walk anything off the barge that easily anywhere,
Yeah.
So it's a whole nother level of things that you can't just call United Rentals and say, hey man, you drop me off a new 870, long reach.
Yeah.
They just don't exist.
Yeah.
So that makes it tough.
Right on. Well, cool. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah. Good.
That's it.
That was easy.